October 12th, it's a Monday. Time for another episode of Let There Be Talk. Thank you for tuning in, Del Razors. It is a handmade edition. I don't know, I'm talking nutty. I try to make the intro different each week. Maybe a different voice.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Let There Be Talk, a handmade edition, episode number 554.
I'm loony today. I'm excited. Got a great guest. I know how you guys really loved my last eyewear episode. I love stunning people out there. People are like, I didn't care about watches, and then I listened to your episode and now I'm into it. Or I didn't give a fuck about boots or eyewear or denim or architecture, whatever. And then you sit down and you take the ride, you go for the journey, and I enjoy that. I enjoy learning myself, constantly seeking out new designers in all different stuff. Stereos, guitars, amps, cars, anything. Constantly want to find the best, constantly searching for the ultimate. And the ultimate really is so many different factors. Is it built high quality? Is it really hard to find and unique? Is there some passion in the company? Whatever. It's all over the board for what something is considered great to me. This man today is holy smokes. He is a genius and an eyewear expert. Been in the game 40 years. 40 years. First of all, the guy looks maybe 37, 38 years old. I'm talking about the great Blake Kuwahara. And you are going to enjoy this man's story. He started out as an optometrist and then realized he liked being in the front of the office more, getting people fitted with the proper cool eyewear, and then digging into that whole world and taking on a creative director job at Liz Claiborne, and then overlooking 7 different brands and designing for them, including the old Jordache. You remember Jordache? Remember that? Had the it was like a pony for the logo. And then starting his own brand, KATA, selling that, moving on, and challenging himself to a whole another new brand, which is his name, Blake Kuwahara. I found it about a year ago. I thought it was one of the most original designed eyeglasses that I'd ever seen. Pair of sunglasses, eyewear. It looked like a pair of goggles. You may have seen me wear it on Instagram. You may have seen me wear a lot of different glasses lately on Instagram. I'm going crazy for eyewear because there was this 15-year period or so where eyewear was just boring to me. I bought a great pair of Tom Browns. I wore them for 12 years because I couldn't find anything else. And now we are in this world where there's 3 or 4 companies in my eyes that are just moving the needle and taking it to another level. Blake is definitely in the top 3 for me. And he's constantly coming out with new shapes, designs, and I love the guy. I love Blake. This guy was a fantastic guest. We recorded it live at the Comedy Store the same night the debates were on. So we had a whole 4 or 5 people there with COVID in the mix also. So it was just, it's the old Dean story. I'm going to do that, a live podcast. And then it's like, oh, we forgot to tell you there's a Laker game on, a Dodger game. The debates are on and there's COVID. So I don't care. It could have just been he and I could talk to this man for hours. And we did it right in the original room. It felt good to sit in that original room, even though I wasn't doing comedy. I was underneath those neon signs again and taking in the amazing vibes of the Comedy Store. Real quick, some great stuff coming up on the podcast. This is a Handmade episode. I'm getting ready to move all the Handmaids under their own platform, their own show. I will have a second podcast here in a few more weeks, just waiting for the artwork and a few other things. And then boom, you will have Let There Be Talk and you will have a second podcast. I don't want to tell you the name yet because I just want to drop it all at once and just bam, there it is. All your amazing creators under one umbrella. You'll be able to find your Brian the Bootmakers, the Jonathan Ward Icon 4x4s, the Jerome Maj, the Blake Kuwaharas, the Brian Slagle. All these great guests I've had on over the years will be all under one platform, and then all the new ones will go on there. I'm kind of blabbering on today. I'm kind of just fired up. I feel good. I did comedy over the weekend again. I'm going to do comedy this weekend in San Diego. This will be the first time that I go out and do a long set in 7 months. I'm excited and nervous. I will be at the American Comedy Co. this weekend. That will be on October 16 and 17, American Comedy Co., downtown San Diego. Come join me. And Shaylin, the dentist, will be on the show with me, my good friend Shaylin. And that's this weekend. Get some tickets and wear a mask. And it's very few tickets. I think it's 40 people a show, so don't sleep on that. And Patreon is kicking ass. Been doing the Zoom Fest for all the Patreoners. Let's give the brand new Patreoners a shout out. Patreon.com/Dean Del Rey. I've got 91 bonus episodes. I do a Zoom Fest with everybody on there on the weekends. We hang out. We shoot the shit about music, films, comedy, COVID, election, whatever. We get into it on there. Esteban Jamie, you are the king donator this week. Esteban Jamie, thank you. Cortez, welcome. Sean Jesperson, welcome. Angry Spangler, there you are, you Patreoner. W. Brooke Freischenmeyer, these are the brand new Patreoners. These are the Del Razors. These are the bonus episode enjoyers. All right, let's get into it right now. Have a great week. I love all you guys. See you at the American Comedy Co. on Friday, Saturday. Candles are lit. Here he is, the eyewear king, Blake Kuwahara. All right, here we are, another episode of Let There Be Talk. Fantastic guest today. Introduce yourself, my man.
I'm Blake Kuwahara. I'm an eyewear designer and design what Dean is wearing.
Yeah.
You're looking good. You're making me look good. Thank you.
You're wearing it also.
I am. I thought we'd be twins today. We could see who wore it better.
I first find out about your stuff. Of course, I am an eyewear freak. I absolutely have been into eyewear my entire life, going back into probably the 70s when the rock star, quote unquote.
Big oversized frames.
Big oversized frames, that kind of Jagger, that kind of Miles Davis, all that kind of stuff. Even Easy Rider,
right?
With Hopper, the stuff he's wearing. I fall in love with sunglasses and eyewear, and over the years, constantly searching for the greatest eyewear. And I think in the last couple years, we are in this new world of eyewear that is unreal, and it's your brand. It's Jacques-Marie Maj and Kubaram, to me, are the three that are pushing the boundaries and constantly reinventing the incredible world of eyewear.
Thank you. Well, eyewear is the first thing that you see. It's right on your face, and it can set the tone and manner for your personality and your mood for the day, and it's easy to change that just by changing out your glasses. And, we started off as a medical necessity, and over the years it's changed into a fashion accessory. So it's, and especially now with Zoom, everyone's on Zoom now, right? So it's all about dressing from the waist up. So eyewear's right there. Eyewear and earrings, that's what it's all about right now.
Yeah. What is your background? First of all, I don't know if it's cool to say your age because it blew my mind.
You're outing me. Come on.
Yeah, but it blew my mind, man. You look fantastic. This guy is about to turn 60, and I swear to God, when I see you on Instagram or in person, I go, man, what's this guy's background? He's got to be like 35, and he's got an incredible eyewear collection. I'm not joking, man.
I've been in the industry now. This year will be 40 years.
40 years?
40 years, yeah. So when I was at UCLA as an undergrad, I worked on the weekends at an optometrist office. That's kind of how I got into it, because when I went to school here in LA, high school. And in my high school, they tracked you. I went to Alhambra High School, and I got tracked in the science sort of lane. And so, all Asian parents want their kids to be doctors. So that was sort of my first professional aspiration, was to be a doctor. But I knew very quickly that wasn't my cup of tea. And working in an optometry office, I felt, this is kind of a perfect melding of what my interests are, because I did have an aptitude for sciences, but there's also the fashion aspect of it. So that's how I got involved in optometry. I'm actually an optometrist.
Really?
I'm a doctor.
Oh, wow.
I'm Dr. Blake Kuwahara, believe it or not.
Is that right?
I went to Berkeley School of Optometry and graduated, and I joined a practice in Manhattan Beach. And it was a very busy practice. So there were two other optometrists and myself. I was the third optometrist. And we each had an area of responsibility within our practice. So one doctor was responsible for the business of the business. The other doctor was responsible for our contact lens section. And I oversaw our optical boutique, as well as seeing patients. And I very quickly found that I enjoyed being more in the front of the house with the eyewear than I did in the dark room seeing patients. And so that's kind of how I made this career shift from becoming an optometrist into the design side of things.
How many years in were you when this happens?
About 3.5 years. And the two other doctors were older than I was. So one doctor was 20 years my senior, the other one was 10 years my senior. And I could just sort of see my future looking down, in our office, and like, that's me in 10 years, that's me in 20 years, seeing patients in a dark room, which is, it's a great profession, but it just, at the end of the day, I knew that it wasn't something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And
now, what era are we talking about? Are we talking about late 70s, early 80s of the Purcell, Varney?
So I graduated Berkeley class of 86, and so I made this career change in 1990.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So in fact, to put it in sort of the fashion timeline, the company that actually hired me, the way they got into the fashion end of things was Liz Claiborne, if you remember Liz Claiborne.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So she was, the largest women's wear designer in the United States at the time. So, in the 80s is really when she made her mark. And the company, which is based in LA, was actually looking for a fashion forecaster for their optical division. So they wanted somebody who had eyewear experience or optical experience, but also an interest in fashion. So I thought, oh my God, this is so perfect for me, blending of my two interests.
Right.
And so I sent them my resume. This is when you had to do that, paper resumes. And they very quickly were not interested in seeing me.
Really?
Yeah, I was an optometrist. And they're like, this is not a job for an optometrist. We want someone with more of a fashion background. But I was very insistent, and the owner of the company gave me a shot. And by my second interview, he said, this position is more entry level, but our creative director is going on maternity leave, and she's not coming back. So we'd like to offer you the creative director position.
Well, for designing.
Yeah, for designing. He just felt that I had a artistic sensibility, and I did have some graphic arts background when I went to UCLA. I was the art director for the UCLA yearbook, and I also did an internship at an interior design firm my last year. at UCLA. So I had some design background. And for him, he said it was easier for him to teach somebody the technical aspects of eyewear design. But he couldn't teach somebody a sense of style, fashion,
Right.
color, balance,
Not at all.
proportion. That's something he felt was a little bit more innate. So he took a huge chance on me. And we're still very good friends. His name is Dick Haft. And he just turned 91 years old.
Whoa.
Lives in Beverly Hills. And he was my mentor. And he really gave me carte blanche. I was responsible for designing 7 brands. One of the brands was Jordache, if you remember Jordache. So again, I'm aging myself.
Like Jordache jeans?
Exactly.
Wow. They had
And
an
Liz
eyewear
Claiborne.
line?
Yeah, they had an eyewear line. And Liz Claiborne, and after being with them for about a year only, he gave me the opportunity to design my own eyewear line. And that was called KATA, K-A-T-A. And KATA is a Japanese word for shape and form. So the inspiration all came from shapes and forms from nature. So stones, twigs, leaves, things like that. And they were cast. And that was sort of the genesis of the collection I'm launching now under my own name, the Gray Label.
Yeah.
Because we're using a bone motif and casting that. So that's how I got my start in the design end of things. So this is the early 90s.
In the early 90s, are you learning about, because, 70s, 80s, all the eyewear, the great eyewear is made in Italy. Right. And that's the thing, Persol was like the hot kind of fashion frame.
Right.
And then, of course, we get into all those millions of brands. But, then I've talked about it before. Varney's there.
Right.
And that's like the first $100 sunglasses and all this stuff. But at what point do you find where it's like the quality aspect of some frames where it was like, God, this stuff is so next level, and then the other stuff was just, fashion?
Right. It was right about that time because, like you said, in the late 70s, early 80s is really when the eyewear was taking a more of a fashion turn. Before it was just eyewear-based companies. They were just sort of commodity product. And then the licensing game started in the 70s. So you had brands like Dior, for instance, was, very big in that time period. And there weren't too many others. Ralph Lauren was just sort of starting in that era. But in the early 90s is when the boutique brands started to emerge. So these independent eyewear designers and brands like Alain Mickley, if you know Alain Mickley from Paris. LA Eyeworks, they're great friends of mine. I did a collaboration with them.
Fantastic.
They just celebrated their, 40th anniversary as well. And that's when eyewear started to take a turn. And that's when my brand, KATA, also was brought to market. And things kind of shifted because in the past, like you said, finer eyewear was typically made in Europe, in Italy and France. But that's when Japan really started to come out as a manufacturing base for high-end eyewear, and has stayed that way actually since then.
I know, that's interesting, right? Because all of a sudden it was Japan. I was getting all my stuff at City Optics in San Fran on Chestnut.
Yeah.
And
Steve Goldberg.
Yeah,
Steve.
Absolutely.
We're friends.
And Steve was giving me an incredible schooling. And there was this point where it went from Italy to all of a sudden Japan. And he was like, this is the new stuff here, Japan. And of course, LA Eyeworks was killing it also with their stuff. But Steve really knew, he knew what the hell was going on. This guy was deep into brands and upcoming stuff. So he taught me everything, really.
That's great. He was one of the pioneers, the early supporters of independent brands, because prior to that, it was all licensed brands. And even now, it's licensed brands. So Gucci and Prada. And
it's all made in one place, right?
Well, a lot of the brands they have their license with a few of the big companies like Luxottica as well. Right. They own Lens Crafters, and it left an opening for independent eyewear designers to do something different that really was not about just slapping on a logo on their product. It was about the design itself. And so the brands that you mentioned, we don't use logos. We don't use logos to identify our brand. We use our design sensibility to give our frames a signature look, so that without having to slap on, a double C's on the side of our temples, by looking at it, you can identify the brand. I think that's kind of a hallmark for any sort of fashion brand, whether or not it's shoes, handbags, eyewear, is to be able to identify the brand and the look and feel by just looking at the product and also touching and feeling. So for me, it's also not just about the shape of the frame or the colors that we use, but it's also in the hand craftsmanship of it. And, we were talking a little bit earlier about the fact that you're a connoisseur of finely made things, whether or not they're boots or jeans. And it's not just about the cut and the fit, but it's also, the touch, right?
Absolutely.
The weight of the denim, how the stitches are made. And in eyewear, it's the same thing. So if you touch and feel my product, we spend a lot of time with the nuance. So the skiving, the cutting, the beveling. So in the hand, especially what I call the touch points, you can really feel, that there's love in a frame. And to me, that's really a hallmark. If the frame feels like there's love in it, that there's care, the designer really put their heart and soul into it, that's a frame I think that's worth wearing. If you're just wearing a frame because of the logo on it, that's a whole other kind of mindset.
Yeah, that's a whole different.
Yeah.
And when you feel your frame or a JMM or a Kubaram, when you feel it, you can tell right away. Look, I can pick up a Tom Ford frame, right, and immediately it's like featherweight. You can just tell, you're like, it may look cool. And he didn't put any logos. He had that metal T thing that kind of was cool. But you can tell the quality right away is not there compared to your frame. This frame I'm wearing right now, I don't think I've wore a frame in my life that has got me stopped more on the street than this Chambers.
Yeah, well, you wear it well.
Yeah, well, what's funny about it was the first frame I picked up at Gagosha. Yeah. I put it on, and I go, this thing looks like a goggle, which kind of excited me, and at the same time, I was like, and I wear anything. I'm pretty like,
bold.
I'll go for it. But I was like, can I wear this on stage without people staring at the eyewear the whole time and missing the jokes? Right. Because the eyewear was that cool.
Well, you don't want it to be distracting. And actually, you picked up on exactly what my design philosophy is that, frames generally tend to be either very boring and minimalist on one end, or very directional on the other in terms of shape and color. And I wanted to sort of find a very happy medium where you're blending art and wearability so that when you walk into the room and the frame walks into the room at the same time. Yeah. As opposed to the frame walking in before you, or you're walking in and then they realize, oh yeah, he's wearing glasses. So it's about letting you shine and also the frame matching your personality. It enhances your personality. And the construction that you have is really a frame within a frame. So they're really made as two separate frames.
Yeah.
The inside frame is made as one. The outside frame is made as a separate frame, and then we laminate them together. And the lamination process alone takes 2 months because we can't have any bubbles or any seams in the frame itself. And then we go through all the milling process. And one of the reasons why you can tell there's love in the frame is because every cut that we put into it is a different step. Every cut then has to be polished, cut, polished. And that all takes time, and time translates into money. And so a lot of the other, more commodity type product, it's about price. So they don't want to spend the time and the effort to give the frame the nuance and love that it deserves. And one of the other things that we do with your frame is we actually miter the frame at a 45-degree angle so that when the temple is closed, there's no break in the end piece. So it's hidden there.
Oh, yeah.
And, this in and of itself takes a lot of work because we have to make sure that it's polished enough so that it doesn't cut you. Because if we don't polish it, it'll be very, very sharp.
Wow.
But not so polished that the corners are rounded and then you don't get the sharp miter. So again, it's all those little extra bits that we do. On the temple tip, we add an extra layer of crystal acetate so that it makes it thicker, so that it gives the frame more ballast, so it fits evenly on the head, so there's more weight, because with frames, you don't want it to be too front heavy, otherwise it'll fall off your face.
Oh, yeah.
So it gives it proper balance, and then it also hugs the back of your head. So again, some of that is, I guess, my background as an optometrist, because you also want to make sure that the frames fit properly, not just look good.
Oh, you're right.
You have to fit properly. Otherwise, your prescription's not going to be in the right place, right? Your frames are going to slip down.
Man, I've had frames where it just slides a little bit, and then the vision's off.
Right, exactly.
How did you come up with this? Is your signature frame that you're wearing that I have also, the Chambers.
Right.
How did you initially come up with this idea, and how long did it take somebody to put it into reality?
Yeah, that's a great question, because that's the hardest thing. You can come up with an idea as a designer, but it has to be able to be produced, and not also be produced, but produced at scales. Making one-offs is relatively easy, but to be able to come up with a concept that can be repeated, because we do have to make these in quantities, is a bit of a challenge. So the way that I really came up with the idea and concept was, at the time, I have a design company called Focus Group West, and we do designs for other brands, other eyewear companies.
Oh, wow.
Including Luxottica, actually. But one of the things that I wanted to bring to market was an aesthetic that my friends were looking for, and myself as well. A lot of my friends are in the creative industries. They're photographers, they're architects, they're graphic designers. So they have a creative sensibility to them. But on the other hand, they also are professionals. They have a business side. So they wanted something that spoke to both sides of their sort of personalities and their business persona. And I came across this old wooden Chinese antique stool that was encased in a clear block of lucite. And I thought, this is brilliant. Here's something that's very, very familiar on the inside, but it's encased in something that's very modern, but yet it's familiar. So I thought, could we do the same thing with eyewear? Can we do a frame within a frame, so that the inner frame is something that you see first, and then the outer frame gives it its special nuance. So it was a challenge. So I came up with the idea, did some drawings, gave it to the factories, and they had to figure out how to do it. And part of the problem is because you're taking two separate materials, two separate acetate materials, and different colors even have different shrinking properties to it. So you can't cut each color the same, because they have different shrinking properties. So
that's crazy. So the black would shrink different than the clear.
Exactly.
Unreal.
Yeah. So when you blend them together, we have to make those adjustments so that we don't get the separation between the two colors. So that took a long time for the factories to figure out and be able to do that on a reliable basis. So it was a lot of trial and error. So it took a couple years just to get the R&D down, and then the production of the frames takes 9 months.
Oh.
So the frame you're wearing takes 9 months to make.
Wow.
Because we have to get the raw material, then we have to laminate the raw material, we have to let the raw material cure, and then we have to go through all the frame production, all the cutting, the milling, the polishing, and all of that. So it takes a long time.
And then also you had to do a little R&D on the shape. Like, was this the shape you had right out of the gate that you wanted, or did you have to tweak it a little bit?
We always do a little bit of tweaking. One of the things I learned actually working for Liz Claiborne way back in the day is that if you have to tweak a frame more than twice, you just throw it away.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because if you keep tweaking, there's something wrong.
This is wrong.
You're better off starting from scratch.
Yeah.
So this one only took a couple tweaks in terms of the shape, but actually the color that both of us are wearing, the crystal, was actually not meant to be in production.
Really?
No, because I did it for myself. I did it as a prototype because I thought, like you said, I wanted something that looked like a goggle, where your lenses and the frame just blended together, so all you saw was a black outline. I thought that was cool.
It's insane.
But I didn't think that it was rich enough because it was crystal and black. And so I was wearing it, and my business partner, Claudio, looked at it and says, "Oh my God, what are you wearing?" And I said, "Well, this is just a prototype." And he said, "We have to have it in the collection."
Oh my God, yeah.
And I said, "No, it doesn't look rich and expensive enough." And he said, "Let's go to one of our accounts, let's get their opinion." And they said, "No, you have to have it." So we actually added it as an add-on. It wasn't meant to be. It was one of those mistakes.
It's a masterpiece frame.
Well, thank you.
It really is.
It's become a signature. And sort of just like architecture, and all my frames are named after architects. Chambers was an architect. because I think what we do as eyewear designers have a lot of similarities to what architects, the challenges that architects have, right? We have to produce something that's aesthetic, but it also has to be engineered properly, and it has to be functional.
Oh, yeah.
So we have the same kind of guidelines that we have to work within. And so that's, so that's that was one of the big challenges. And like with architecture, the more pure it is, the more minimal the architecture is, like John Pawson, who's one of my great heroes in terms of design, because everything is so pure.
Yeah.
It makes the actual execution much more difficult, because you can't hide things like in architecture through baseboards, right? Because you see everything.
Like an Eichler.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And so the same thing is with the black and crystal, because when you put black next to crystal, you see everything, right? If crystal was tortoise, so you have this melange of colors, you can hide a lot of errors. But with black and crystal, if there's any separation of the seam, there's any bubbles, if it's polished incorrectly, you're going to see it instantly. So even though it looks so simple, black and crystal is the most difficult color combination in my collection.
Wow. Yeah. It is electric. I also love the Ghost.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which...
Oh, you brought a Ghost?
For you, my friend, because I know.
I love it.
And these are hard to come by.
Oh, my God.
So this is from me to you.
Oh, dude. Oh.
And I want you to wear it in good health.
Oh, I will. Oh, wow. Look at that. So it's basically like a black and crystal, but it's...
So the inside color is opaque.
Right.
And so, it's interesting how colors change the personality of the frame.
Wow, man.
So it'll give you...
So it's a frosted.
It's opaque. So actually the way the acetate is made, there's sort of a milky type of structure that's extruded into the base.
It's unreal.
Yeah. And that's also why even the raw material of crystal is very difficult to make, because if there's any irregularity in the flow of the acetate when they make it, or any bubbles, even in the raw material, you're going to see it. And the black actually is a very special black acetate that comes from Japan, because we tested a lot of acetates. A lot of the acetates good acetates come from Italy, because they're masters at color. And so originally I used a virgin black from Italy. Mazzucchelli is the company that makes the acetate, but it was bleeding. And we couldn't figure out why. So we needed a harder, denser acetate, black acetate. So not all blacks are the same in terms of acetate material. So this one comes from a company in Japan that doesn't bleed in the material. So even the raw materials, have to be tested.
Now, when you start your company, how long has it been going?
It's only 5 years.
Only 5 years.
So we're kind of a baby company.
Now, how long? Because I don't hear about it until about a year ago.
Yeah.
But did it start to take off, or is it still slow? Because I'll tell you what, man. I wear this frame. I can't even tell you. If I do an Instagram live with this frame on, the entire time the comments are, incredible eyewear. Who makes those glasses? What is that frame?
Thanks for being a good ambassador. No, we started 5 years ago, and the way that it started was, my intention was not to have my own brand. My intention was to design for other people. That's sort of been my background, aside from the time when I had KATA Eyewear, and that was in the marketplace for 10 years, and it was very artisanal in the workmanship and the sensibility. And then I became, then the company was sold. We sold the company to a New York-based company, and then I became creative director for different eyewear companies. One of them, I started with the Liz Claiborne business, but then I also worked for a company based in LA that had the license for Converse. And also, when they brought me on board, they wanted to enhance their brand portfolio. And I'm a member of the CFDA, the Council of Fashion Designers of America. And I was friends with John Varvatos, if you know John Varvatos, the fashion designer.
Of course.
And at the time, he was looking for somebody to partner with to do his eyewear. And that's how my partnership with John Varvatos started. And I knew Carolina Herrera, if you know Carolina Herrera, the fashion designer as well. And she was looking for an eyewear designer as well. So my history has always been to collaborate with other designers.
Right.
And design eyewear collections for them. And when I started my own design company, my friends that own a eyewear brand called Bevel asked me if I would help them and work with them to design a special collection for them. And at the time, I was sort of thinking about maybe doing my own eyewear line, again, designing for my friends because they were looking for something that wasn't already in the marketplace. And the conversation very quickly turned around. It was less about me designing for them and more about them partnering with me to bring out my own eyewear brand.
So talk to your friends. What are they looking for in shapes, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, well, and also, again, something that was artful but also wearable but didn't overtake their own personality. That was sort of the concept. So I had a concept. They loved the concept. And for me as a designer, even though I enjoy the business side of things, I prefer to spend my time and effort on the creative side of things, on the marketing, on the product itself. And they already had an infrastructure in place for their own eyewear brand with the sales, the warehousing, customer service, accounting. So I piggybacked on that. And so when we started off very small. We only had 100 sets of frames.
Right. And how many different shapes at that time?
We had 9 different shapes. And, so we came out with a very tight collection.
Yeah.
But we could only sell 100 accounts. And in the first quarter, we ended up selling our 100 accounts. We sold out. And so that's how we build our collection. So we're very discreet. We don't do a lot of advertising. We don't do a lot of product placement. We like it all to be organic, like you found it. To me, that's much more interesting. We don't participate in any pay to play.
Yeah.
Because I want the people that like our brand to discover it, and not because we paid someone to wear it.
Yeah, and I want to make that clear too. Some people, when I have people on this show, it is only because I love what they do. There's no payment to me. There's no sponsorship. It's strictly for what they do. And I believe.
Thank you for doing that.
Well, I believe in it because I think that if these brands go away, we're all just going to be shopping at Walmart's, and we're going to. It's just all. It's gone.
Yeah. No, we all appreciate that, and I think it's part of the authenticity of what we do in our brand, and I want to honor that, and not to feel that we have to go down the path that a lot of brands have had to do, to get celebrities or people of notoriety or influencers to wear their product. And I think that it's diminished what that means. What does it mean to be an influencer? Someone's paying you to promote their product.
Yeah, that's not an influencer.
Right, exactly.
That's just an advertiser.
And I think, when you do comedy, when you do what you do, it has to come from the heart, right? It has to be authentic.
Right.
And for you to support brands that you believe in and that you wear, I think is a great testament to to your honesty, to your integrity, and I think it just makes you much more credible.
Yeah.
And that's what we look for. So we do, we're very sort of discreet in the way that we approach our product and our marketing. We let the people that sell our product be our spokespeople and our ambassadors, like Gagosha here in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And she supports the brands that you had mentioned because she believes in what we do, thankfully, and curates the brands so that people who shop in stores like that know that, look, these people have done their homework. They know what's available in the marketplace. This is what they believe in.
Yeah.
And LA Eyeworks is another one. They have their own brand.
And also Ryan over there on Melrose, my eye doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's it?
Ions.
Positive Ions.
Yeah, and he also has a place in Manhattan Beach.
Right.
Which we also sell to. Yeah.
But these guys are people that know their stuff. I hate going into a store, and I just told my buddy this over at Optical Connection. I was like, I'll go into a store and I know more than them.
Yeah.
So I just leave. And also I didn't buy new eyewear for 12 years because I had these Tom Browns and nobody was making anything new and exciting. There was a dead period there for like 12, 15 years.
Yeah, it's like anything in fashion. If you take the fashion risk, it generally means that you're speaking to a much smaller audience, and fashion has become a business. So in general, you want to speak to a broader audience, but to do that, you have price considerations, you have distribution considerations, and it takes away from the exclusivity and the interest in the product. The product really suffers in that case. And thankfully, there's enough independent optical boutiques and retailers, fashion retailers, that are supporting our brands, and they're looking for something different. And it's a shame that some of these, like Barney's, went out of business. But in part, I think it's because they lost their vision.
They did.
You know what I mean?
They did.
They went mainstream, and what people went to Barney's for was that unique fashion item.
Yeah, like a Maxfield's.
Yes, exactly.
Maxfield's is so insane.
Yeah.
Well, people go, I go in there, it's fucking $4 million for something. Well, yeah, but maybe you can't afford it, but it gives you ideas of getting something different outside of the box.
Yeah, and there is an audience for that. One of our other accounts here is on Sunset, H. Lorenzo. It's a fashion account. They carry exclusive apparel, but also accessories. And for us, it's not about reaching, a vast number of people.
No.
It's really just about reaching the right people.
Right.
And so that's what we really, focus on. The people who can appreciate what we do, what we bring to market, people like yourself that are knowledgeable about the product category, and they understand the nuances. So like you said, you can't be fooled by, a brand name or something that's, a product that someone says is hot and cool. That's not what you're looking for. That's not what really pushes your buttons, right?
No.
You're looking for something that has the craftsmanship to it, the uniqueness, but doesn't necessarily, it's not outlandish to wear. It has to fit your overall head-to-toe sensibility.
Hold on here, Blake. I got to do a quick read. This episode is brought to you by my brand new sponsor, Optical Connection, located in Studio City, California, right there in the heart of Los Angeles. Doesn't matter where you live, though, because you can visit their website, optical-connection.com, and get 10% off any eyewear needs. These guys are a full-service boutique specializing in luxury eyewear, sunglasses, and accessories. They also have an eye doctor in there, so they are a one-stop shop. Optical Connections is one of the finest stores I've ever been in. Their selection is insane. They have got massive amounts of awesome stuff, and you're going to get 10% off by using the code on the website, DEAN, on any purchase, or call them up and use the code. Say, hey, I heard about it from Dean Del Rey. I'm a Del Raiser, and I want to get 10% off. Call them if you want, 818-766-4848, optical-connection.com. Do it. It helps the show. It helps small business. These guys have been in the biz for 18 years. They know everything about your optical needs. A boutique one-stop super eyewear shop. Use the code DEAN. All right, let's get back into it, Blake. When you start getting going, how many times are you going to Japan a lot?
Not anymore.
But when you started, were you going a lot to?
I was there about every other month or so. So
really?
every 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the seasons and how we work, because it's a very hands-on project.
Yeah.
And it is something that takes a team. Because they're the CAD designers, they're the engineers, they're the prototype people, they're the production people. And also, you can't forget the administration part of it too, because, things have to get out the door on time. And in Japan, most of the frames are made in Fukui, in Sabai, the prefecture. So it's kind of eastern side, the Japan seaside. But our business offices are in Osaka. And so it's even now, so one, I can't travel to Japan because we're not allowed to.
Of course.
And so last time I was in Asia was, January, I guess. And, then everything's shut down. But even within Japan, the people in Osaka can't go to Fukui because there's a higher incidence of COVID in Osaka.
Oh, wow.
So it's not necessarily by law they can't, but the people in Fukui don't want to see them. Like, don't come to the factory.
Yeah.
So everything is taking longer because if, when you're in the factory and you just want something nuanced, right? Like, I want this corner to be rounder or sharper or whatever, they can do it right then. They put it on polishing wheel and then 2 seconds later, is this what you want? And if it's not, they go back again. But then, within a 5-10 minute period of time, you can get what you want. In this case, you can't do that. So they have to FedEx or messenger the product to the office in Osaka.
Yeah, they make the move,
and
send it back.
back and forth, back and forth. Or even if you try to do it by Zoom, you don't get the touch and feel.
Right.
You don't get the hand. So it's been a challenge. On the other side, on the retail side, things were shut down. So there wasn't the rush to market. And now things are finally sort of picking up again. But even retailers are slowly getting their mojo back, right? Because they have to have social distancing.
Right.
Or some of them are doing by appointment only, so they can't see the same number of clients that they would normally see. So it's sort of helped in terms of our supply chain as well. So now our supply chain is matching the retail demand.
Because you were selling out before and then you would be out?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because we produce in limited numbers. So
how difficult is it for you to come up with shapes that you dig and are original? Because that's got to be a hard.
Yeah.
There's like 5 shapes in the world.
It's true.
And then you've got to just kind of do your own thing.
It's all about tweaking. I mean, it's the same thing with a pair of jeans.
Yeah.
I mean, how many cuts are there of a 5-pocket jean?
Yeah,
right?
there's 4 cuts, and 3 of them no one wears anymore. Boot cut, bell bottom.
Exactly. And then you have your skinny and all that. So honestly, the same thing is true with eyewear. And that's what makes it a huge challenge from a design standpoint, because it also has to be functional, has to fit, the fitting characteristics, the ergonomics. And there are only certain shapes that look good on people. I mean, if we did a shape that was, like a star or a heart.
Yeah, like a Bootsy Collins or whatever.
Yeah, that's novelty.
Yeah,
That's not something that you're going to have a great demand for. And then that's not my aesthetic either. So it's about how can you take a shape and make it new? And that's really where the artistry and the craftsmanship comes in, and working in with color, because face sizes only fall within a certain range as well.
Yeah.
Right? So we have to work within those constraints. So it is challenging. So coming up with different shapes that fit a range of face shapes, but we also have to figure out also the bridge, the nose, and also the center, the pupil, where the pupils sit. Because even though some people have wide heads, but the pupils are narrow. Or just the opposite. We have a narrow head, but your pupils are offset. So there's a lot of different ways that we can maneuver and manipulate the sizing, whether or not we play with the bridge size or the eye size or the depth of the frame to get the right fit.
One of the things that blows my mind about your frames is what basically looks like, when I was growing up, kids' marbles. The way you get these colors inside there, that is electric to me to see that stuff.
It's held as a secret to a lot of the companies. Getting into an acetate raw material supplier is very hard to do. Going into a frame supplier, a lot of them will show you how a frame is made. How acetate is made is kind of the secret. And the very complex acetates, they call block acetate. So it's made in a big vat.
Of course.
And it's almost made like you would make a cake. So depending on what the pattern is of the acetate, determines how they put the different components. And all the components have to be individual as well. So we have some acetates in our collection that I still honestly don't know how they make the acetate that's pixelated. So I know that they have to extrude the small round dots, so it comes out almost like spaghetti in black, and they have to then interject that into, let's say, crystal. But the pattern has to be very, very consistent. And then it goes through a pressing process, and then they cut it into sheets, and then sheets into smaller slabs, and then you mill out the acetate. So it's a very complex process, is actually the raw material, and depending on how complex the pattern is and how many colors are involved as well. So raw material is interesting as a design, discipline itself. And one of the things that I've done, and the reason why I've been able to sort of know that process, is because actually I've done consulting work for acetate suppliers in terms of pattern, in terms of color. Because with pattern, if there's too many windows and spaces in between the color chunks, it looks very odd on a frame, right? Because it might be clear in the center, and then you have color block here, so you have to make sure that the windows are not too open.
Oh yeah.
And also the colors. Certain colors just don't look. They might look good on a shirt or a pair of pants, but on the face they don't look good.
Yeah.
So you have to work also with color as well. So it's an interesting component to our business.
Now you got two lines. I want to make that clear with people. You have the kind of acetate this line here, and then the other one. What is it called?
Well, it's all under my label,
right? Of course,
under Blake Kuwahara Eyewear. But then I introduced the gray label.
That's it.
And the gray label was introduced January of this year. So the design intent is a little bit different, and I wanted to separate it from my core collection, which is the frame within the frame concept. And the overarching design philosophy for my brand is artful but wearable. And from my earlier days with my first brand, KATA Eyewear, is all about shape and form. It was very dimensional, very textural, and it was mostly metal, and it was cast, so it's like jewelry. So it goes into a mold, use molten metal,
like chrome heart stuff.
Yeah, exactly. To get like this, so you get the dimensionality of the metal as opposed to just pressing and stamping, which is typical in our industry. And being an optometrist, we take anatomy classes, and even my undergraduate work, I have a degree in psychobiology. We needed to have a background in biology. So I've always been intrigued by the human skeleton, the articulature of the human bones and the joints, because that's kind of what we work with the eyewear. We work with essentially a joint or a hinge.
Yeah.
So I wanted to see if I can use that as a structure for my frames. And so that's how the gray label came about. It was just about taking a motif and being able to execute it in such a way that was, again, subtle, but when you look at it in close proximity, you realize that there's something else going on here. It's not just about the frame itself, but you realize that it's more about the temple, whereas my core collection is more about the front of the frame.
Right. Yeah, the temple on those are amazing. It looks like if you just peeled the skin away off an arm and you just have the bone there. It's really incredible, and the fit and the finish on it and the quality of it is unbelievable. What was that one I was wearing in the photo?
Yeah, you were wearing the BK1001.
Yeah.
And that is also one of the things that we wanted to do was to take advantage of the casting. So the hinge, which is typically soldered onto another piece of metal, the temple, we don't do that in that collection in the gray label. The hinge component is actually cast as part of the temple, so there's no soldering. It's all one piece, so it gives it a much more robust structure, and also you get the dimension. So that also is, if you're not really familiar with frame construction, it's something that you wouldn't necessarily pick up on. But what you will notice is that there's something different about this. The craftsmanship is different. And those are the little secrets that we like to put into our product to give those extra bits of surprise.
And it's not going to fall apart.
Yeah, exactly. So it's much more robust.
I never knew that your frames were named after architects. That's incredible, because I'm so into architecture.
Yeah.
Lautner's and Lloyd Wright. And
so we have a Wright. We have a Lautner. You mentioned Eichler. We have an Eichler in the collection. And some of them are obscure as well.
I'm just putting it together now, though. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. It's so weird that I didn't put it together.
Because, they're my design heroes.
Yeah.
Because they have the same constraints that we do on a much bigger scale, obviously, but they have to, satisfy a client's needs. It has to be engineered properly. It has to look good. It has to function as well. And, in our industry, we do have to name our product, our styles. And you could either use numbers. I use numbers for my gray label. And for my core collection, I used architects because it's kind of paying homage to, I think, some great designers that don't really get the attention that they deserve.
It makes me love the brand even
Oh, thank
more,
you.
which is nuts. We're in the Comedy Store right now, and I asked you if you ever been here. You said you'd been here once a long time ago.
Yeah.
Did you just come to see random comedy, or were you?
I was here with friends, and when we could go out.
Yeah.
Now I cherish those days. I love stand-up. Love stand-up comedy. I love seeing stand-up comics. I hesitate. I have to be really honest with you, seeing them in person, because it makes me so nervous that if they bomb, and you're standing,
Yeah.
a yard from them, you're like this, right?
Yeah.
And usually they don't. And I give you guys so much credit, because that's the hardest thing to do, is to be able to make people laugh and to be so vulnerable, to put yourself out there. But to be an audience member, honestly, it makes me really, really nervous. So if I watch it on YouTube, and even if it's comics that
Yeah.
right? I'm sure you've probably had moments where either you lose your words or you get sidetracked. Maybe you haven't. I don't know.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's part of the thing, and it makes it dangerous and fun.
Right, and maybe that that's the adrenaline run that you get, and I think part of it is there's a billboard here that says what makes a man, vulnerability, and that's true. You're being very vulnerable, which I think endears you to your audience. And I think sometimes those missteps can actually be gems, right?
Yeah,
and that's like even with my eyewear. This was a misstep. This wasn't meant to be.
Totally.
But sometimes you find a different path forward, and that's what makes it special.
Especially when you're riffing.
Yeah.
Or if you get into trouble,
Yeah.
your brain gets into that deer in the headlights kind of thing of either you're going to get run over, or you're going to be able to go somewhere that you would have never gone before, and then you get some kind of comedy gold out of that.
And then what you have in your profession, you have that interaction with a live audience. For me, it's a very isolating kind of experience, because you don't really know until you launch the product. I mean, you get feedback, but it's not quite the same, because you don't want to, if you ask 100 people, sometimes you get 100 different responses, right? So I tend to go to certain people that I trust and get their opinion on it, where I can get an honest opinion. But we've already made the product before.
Yeah, so
it's either going to fly or it's going to be a stinker.
Yeah.
And
a stinker.
But when you do what you do, you get instant feedback.
Yeah.
So I think that could be amazing and maybe terrifying at the same time.
Yeah, it's true. You just dropped a new line, right?
Our fall collection just dropped on Monday, so we're excited about that.
And where can people see that?
Well, all the retail locations are on our website. But here in Los Angeles, we have Gogosha, like we mentioned. We have LA Eyeworks on Melrose. So we have a number of different retailers, H. Lorenzo as well. So we have worldwide, we have about 400 retailers.
Whoa, 400? Yeah. That's incredible.
But it's a big world. So it's
I know.
So it's really not that many.
Yeah, I got you.
Because we do, also just like our retailers like to curate, we also curate, and we want to make sure we're in the right kind of doors that appreciate the product, that can understand how it's made, and really communicate our story.
Yeah.
That's really what it's all about.
Is the new line up on the website to where you can see it?
Yeah, we just... October 1st, we refreshed our website, so you can see the new Gray Label collection.
You just showed me one that was great. What was it? It was kind of, I called it the Bruce Lee.
That's a Renwick. Yeah.
That thing's great.
Yeah. So it's a little bit of a take of an aviator with a keyhole bridge.
Yeah, cool. And I love the Davis.
Yes. Yeah.
I love.
And I'm impressed that you know the names.
Oh, yeah. Oh, what are you talking? You're talking to a guy. I'm not part-timing you. I absolutely love your brand. I told you the 3 brands that I think are out there moving the mark,
And so the Davis was named after John Marsh Davis, who lived in Sausalito. He was a disciple of Frank Lloyd Wright.
Oh, wow.
And one of my very good friends, Dave Cause, who's a musician, actually, he lives in
a Davis
house. Yeah.
Wow. Do you have an architect that, are you living in a house that was built by a famous architect? There's so many great ones here in LA.
I live in the Shoreham Towers, which is mid-century modern. I don't actually know who designed it.
Oh, yeah.
But it's a great building. It has a very, and we just went through a big remodel, so it looks even better now. But they still kept the integrity of the era. My house up north is an unknown architect, but it's a very different aesthetic. It's built in 1930, and it's a Mediterranean style house. So
that's great.
Yeah.
I'm such an Eichler guy or mid-century.
Right.
I get out there into Palm Springs, my head pops off.
Yeah, I just came from Palm Springs this weekend.
Yeah, right. And I'm out there, my head it's just incredible how much I love design and how much I look at it at all times.
Well, it surrounds us.
It surrounds us.
It's just like, the magazine wallpaper. It's what surrounds us.
Yeah.
And, it's great that you have that sensitivity to design. So it doesn't matter whether or not it's eyeglasses or a pair of jeans or a pair of boots.
Yeah. Or this building.
Or a car. Yeah, absolutely.
This comedy store here, the design, it's a black building in the middle of Sunset Strip.
It's iconic.
It's iconic, man,
And I think that's what a lot of designers, are strive for, that are whatever we come up with doesn't date, right? And that has a certain signature look. And of course, just like anything needs to be refreshed, but it has lasting power. And I think that's one of the goals that I have in my product as well. So thanks for appreciating that.
I can't thank you enough for doing the show. I know I was hounding you.
No. Well, I'm only here part-time, so I'm glad that this worked out.
And COVID, hit, and it was just weird. But I really wanted to talk to you because, I just think that some of your eyewear is just so original, and it's like nothing I've ever seen.
I appreciate it.
And I love that you 40 years in the game. I'll tell you one thing that makes me crazy is a human that's wearing a frame that is too small for their face.
Right.
I can't believe that no one tells them when they're putting it on, that is way too small for your face.
Well, just like if you're trying a pair of jeans or you go into a clothing store and everything you put on, they say, oh, that looks great, because they're just interested in the sale.
Horrible.
And with eyewear, it's not just about the look, but also like we talked about earlier, it has to fit properly because in general it holds a prescription. And where it sits on your face and how big it is influences all of that, the optics, right?
Yeah.
Because if something's too small or too big, it also influences the lens thickness and the centration of the lens. So all those things are very important. Absolutely. So you got to go to the right place.
You nailed it with your designs. I love the
Thank you for making me look good.
I love the piece back here where your logo is. And
it's actually part of my family crest.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
really?
So I'm fourth generation Japanese American. So we all have a family crest. Mine kind of looks almost like a hashtag, actually.
Yeah.
And it does represent negative and positive space, which is what my brand represents. So it's a take on my family crest.
And you grew up in L.A., huh?
Fourth generation Japanese American, grew up in L.A.
Which neighborhood?
East Side, Monterey Park.
Oh, rad. Yeah. Were you into, like, speaking of fashion stuff, were you going to concerts and stuff back in the day?
My first concert was Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Oh, I love you. Oh, man, in the 70s?
Yeah.
Oh, on
78.
On the Shining Star era.
Yeah,
Whoa.
exactly.
Oh, God, that's so great, right? How great is Earth, Wind, and Fire?
I'm glad it was that and not like something like the Carpenters or something.
Well, thank you for doing the show.
Thank you for having me.
Give them your Instagram.
It's at Blake Kuwahara, Kuwahara, Blake, Blake.
Website is the same.
Yeah, www.blakekuwahara.com.
You can find it all over America.
Yeah, and you go into our website. We have it's a location tab. Everything's listed alphabetically by state, city, and then U.S. locations are first, and all the other locations in different countries are after that. So.
Thank you so much, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you. There you guys go. Another episode of Let There Be Talk right there, live at the Comedy Store. We had about 4 people here because the debates are going on
and
tonight.
It's COVID. It's okay.
It's COVID, yeah. But you know what? I couldn't think of a cooler spot to interview than here.
This worked out perfectly.
I know.
Under the David Letterman sign, even. I mean, I love this. And Gary Shandling.
Yeah, right. We're surrounded by the incredible neons right in here, man. It's just a beautiful room. Perfect. And thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Dean.
All right. There you go, guys. See ya.